a lot of the young people are really hidden themselves and behind lots of different things, and we're trying to sort of get back to them and find out who they are and what they would like to be and how they think about it.
Welcome to Inspiring Voices, the podcast of the Sing Up Foundation. We believe in harnessing the power of singing to improve mental health and well-being for children and young people. I'm Baz Chapman, and in this first series I'll be speaking with inspirational singers, music leaders, researchers and other specialists to consider the unique role of singing, songwriting, voice exploration and creative music making in transforming young people's mental health and well-being.
Inspiring Voices, a new podcast from the Sing Up Foundation.
Joining me for this podcast is Chris Morris. Chris is a community musician who's working around the Sheffield area. He's done many things in the world of music, including setting up recording studios for community use, organising music events and festivals, and guiding and mentoring young people around the city and around Yorkshire. He's a lead practitioner with Yorkshire Youth in music, working with young people in youth justice settings and secure children's homes, who they describe as one of their most exceptional music leaders, working as he does with some of the nation's most vulnerable young people so that they can discover, explore and develop their musical and creative potential. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Very nice.
Tell me about music making early on in your life and what sort of an influence that had in the person that you've become.
I was introduced to music at primary school, with sort of lots of groups singing and singing in assembly, and then we were offered a violin lesson, so I was which happened to be the Suzuki method. I don't know if people know about that, but it was a sort of imported sort of Chinese system of, I think Chinese, or was it Korean?
Yep.
I don't know. That's I should know. Where we sort of we all young people, we all sort of scratched away and these songs, and I played the violin I think till I was for 10 years, and I don't know whether ever I don't think I can ever say I really enjoyed it. Funnily enough, but I think in retrospect, it was a really brilliant introduction to developing musical skills. I had to learn how to tune, had to know what was in tune and what was not in tune. There was that sort of the discipline of practice, but I felt quite disengaged from it, in terms of it being an enjoyable thing. It had no relation to. I felt no excitement about it. Likewise, I was in the church choir and learned to sing lots of very beautiful works by Handel and Bach, but again, as a young person, culturally and socially, just did nothing for me. But now again, I recognise the skills it's given me. So. But it was interesting. I became musical, but sort of didn't develop a passion for music until I think I heard Adam and the Ants at about the age of 10 years old, and got really excited and suddenly realised there was, this thing called music. That's completely sort of engaged me, and I went and quickly learned how to play the guitar. And then things sort of developed from there.
Is there anything in that about that music, and when you're sort of starting to engage with making music yourself, that it doesn't always have to be enjoyable to be valuable?
Yeah, well, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because as a music practitioner, one would always hope that enjoyment was a fairly major ingredient in your delivery, but absolutely, sometimes it's work, and sometimes there is but not as that, which is not necessarily unenjoyable, I suppose, isn't it? But it's, and is there a work? Oh dear, is there this sort of perhaps toxic word nowadays of a work ethic? But the pleasure in putting some work in and getting a reward, and that's a different kind of pleasure. Whether that's enjoyable or not is another thing. But certainly, I think I've had sessions with young people where we've worked really hard, and it's been tough, but there's been a real sense of achievement from it. So I'm not sure if I can quantify it anymore.
Perhaps it's just due to the fact that there aren't shortcuts to mastery. If you want to get really kind of expert in something, or you have that kind of talent, innate talent or passion, at some point there's got to come some sort of work ethic or discipline or repetition or whatever.
Yeah, I think, and there is, I suppose, there is a posthumous enjoyment, isn't there? Yeah. There's the satisfaction of having achieved something and been, and one of the wonderful things about musical progression is that it can happen quickly, I think. Perhaps not with a violin. Maybe that's why I had a problem with the violin. But perhaps with, learning a new guitar chord, or learning to sing a new song, or learning to play and do something new on a drum kit. That progression can be fairly quick and quantifiable. And I couldn't do this half an hour ago, and now I can. And maybe there's a satisfaction, which is the word, that perhaps rather than enjoyment.
Yeah. So what got you from that kind of music making to what you're doing now?
I suppose I joined lots of bands when I was younger. I was from 13, 14, formed bands, and I really struggled with reading music always, and remembering sequences, and sort of short-term memory. So having to learn something was very difficult for me. So I very quickly enjoyed improvising with fellow musicians or friends, and I think found the love of that really, really quickly. And I think that has fed my musical, my own music, my musical approach, and also fed my practice with young people. I'm very reluctant to let's sing this song or let's do this song, and more. I think because you can get that wrong, you can immediately then get things. Oh, that's not how it goes. I'm not as good as that. How it should sound. So I think I've always tried to avoid that. So and I think that's also meant that no instrument is off limits, because if there isn't a sort of, you have to make this sound or you've got it wrong, then you can play anything, can't you? You can blow or bang or strum anything, and you make a sound, and it's a positive start. So I think probably that's the path I've gone on.
So looking at singing specifically, from your experience, what is it about singing that can be so powerful for children and young people's mental health and well-being?
It's interesting because it's probably one of the hardest things to do in front of somebody is to sing. I'm sure this is a common theme in conversations with practitioners. The voice is almost sort of almost revealing your very bare soul to somebody if you choose to sing in front of them. You're very vulnerable to criticism, perhaps, but also maybe there and all those things, and judgment of what is a good singer and what's not a good singer. But also, I think probably something even more fundamental in that to sing is to reveal oneself. And unless you are in a very safe, reassured that you're in a safe environment with somebody who is going to treat you with care, then that is a difficult thing, I think. But it's also that. But then perhaps the work in which a lot of the work that I do is all about that relationship and the trust and developing a relationship in which, one could trust somebody to do something and not that you might think make you look foolish, and for you to realize that it doesn't make you look foolish. In fact, if anything, it makes you quite brave and quite psychologically sort of stronger than you thought you might have been. And I think the psychological element of letting yourself out of the bag, perhaps, and that's probably key to a lot of the work that I do, and because that's where a lot of the young people are really hitting themselves and behind lots of different things, and we're trying to sort of get back to them and find out who they are and what they would like to be and how they think about it.
So what's it like working in these challenging contexts, such as young offender institutions, with music particularly?
There's a lot to take in and a lot to think about on many different levels. But I think the one that doesn't get talked about, which in sort of, I don't know why it's not really talked about and not really engaged with, but is the institution itself. You're walking into an environment. So a secure children's home I'll explain very briefly, is a secure care home for those who are deemed too vulnerable to not be secure in a secure environment or unsafe. This will include people in social services, so young people who are at risk to maybe themselves or from others, and that could be from it could be gang related, it could be domestic related, it could be from abuse, it could be from at risk of entering sort of criminal activity. And then you've also got young people who actually have come through and have been sentenced or given some sort of court, and they're being sort of incarcerated for a length of time, whether in criminally or sort of on awaiting trial. So there's a very sort of interesting mix of young people, but I would say probably all of them are vulnerable young people. So we have them, and we're securing them, and so you're walking into an environment in which every door has a key, and you with a bit of training have this key. The kids don't have keys. And so we're effectively locking kids up, which is a really tough thing, I think, to get your head around, to walk into an environment in which that is happening. And there is a power relationship. You have a key. Young people do not have a key. And we're also not only so you've got this relationship going on, which is very odd. It's not normal and needs to be thought about all the time. As staff and fellows and other staff, we're all locked in with each other as well. And that's having an effect. And it's not, one tends to forget that any behaviors that happen, that's with either staff or with young people or yourself, is in this hotbed or this hothouse environment, which is all having a psychological effect on us. But it's almost never talked about, because maybe it becomes just, that's my work environment now. It's normal. Everyone else seems to be getting on okay. All right, well, but it's not. It's not normal. So I think that's the first thing to be taken into account. And lots of people think, oh, I'd love to go and work in that environment. I'd love to do it, and go there, and they go, whoa, it's not for me. I can't do this. So that's the first one, and then of course then you've got these young people, and you've got a job to do, and as you sort of hinted at the beginning, there are so many different things that we might need to do with these young people. Making music is one of them, but it's like why and how can we use music to maybe improve the young person's situation, or just how they feel about themselves, or their relationship with learning. Often that seems to be the sort of the key job initially, is to try and address the young person's idea about learning, their own capabilities, and the possibilities of what they can do. Sorry, that seemed a convoluted answer.
No, not at all. When, as you say, when considering what it's like, there are so many things happening. So what's going through your mind as you're leading a session? Presumably it's a lot more than just making music.
Absolutely, yeah. So in the best circumstances, I've been able to talk with staff about the young people that you're going to work with. You've been able to assess what their immediate needs are, how are they on a sort of hourly, daily basis in terms of how they respond to other people. Are they able to work with people? Do they have what's their relationship to learning, or relationship to being put into an environment with somebody else, and then perhaps what are their long-term issues. If you can the sort of reports from CAMs and psychologists are usually around, so it's very useful to find out those things. Often lots of young people in secure settings have some kind of learning differences or learning difficulties. So you kind of prepare yourself and adjust yourself to kind of be prepared for those. Almost always it's at first just create a relationship, and use whatever means you have to start from zero. And I think what I try and do most is try and dispel the idea that I am somebody with great knowledge that I'm going to pass on to somebody. That's not. I might have skills, but I'm not going to reveal them until it's an appropriate time to reveal my skills or knowledge, and we're there to work together. Perhaps it's a collaborative process that I take. Certainly not a sort of pedagogic. I'm passing down great wisdom to you. That might reveal itself over time if it's useful, but if it's not useful, so we try and start on an equal keel, and use whatever means is necessary on that. Often it's sharing musical tastes, and perhaps also doing something that they might think, to sort of show that I trust the young person. So I may well sing, or I might well sing a tune, or something that I like, and I won't ask them to necessarily, but I'll show that I can be vulnerable and not be too worried about it, and that not demand that they do it too. But I think it's just that, really, isn't it? Letting someone know that I'm not a threat.
So what kind of music making do you do? What does a session look like?
Obviously, it depends on what you have. I'll always make sure I have something to hit, something to twang, a keyboard. There's often a computer around for its multiple sort of uses. I will probably touch on why that sometimes the computers aren't particularly good. lots of young people, of course, are so sort of associate anything with almost everything with technology now. So sometimes it's almost I've had young people come in and look at a guitar and go, "What is that?" They've never seen one. They're very happy to look at some complicated computer screen, but the guitar's freaking them out. Those things that we can shake, hit, any noise making sort of, but a range of things that are, because I sort of, for myself, I think I separate things into stuff you hit, stuff you twang, and stuff you press. And I allow someone to explore those things, and singing, of course.
But singing normally with a relationship to the instruments as well.
Yeah, I don't start with singing. Very rarely start with singing, because as from what we said before, I think it's just too much, asking too much too early, and often getting someone to even speak to you. Some of these young people may be nonverbal, or they may be choosing to not be speaking out of, well, who knows what reasons, but often fear and safety. So for me to ask them to sing wouldn't be good. But singing along to something often happens really well. So yeah, finding YouTube is a great resource sometimes. It's nice to share music, and often sharing your favorite songs, and often can lead to people joining in and singing fairly quickly. So I would use that, certainly.
You'd be more likely to use that than sort of, here's a song about the weather, let's learn this together.
Yes. I think that's interesting. So it's rare for the young people in secure places to be comfortable with something like that. Their experience of school would be minimal, if any, a lot of the time. It's typically very minimal attendance at school, minimum care at home. Often these kids are neglected, left to fend for themselves, and extremely careful about not making themselves feel stupid or any less than they do already. And I think that sort of, perhaps it's the privilege. I feel privileged to have been brought up to feel confident in a situation where I might sing in front of somebody or sing with somebody straight away. I think that's not a norm for these young people. That's very much a threat. And I'm asking to really take them out of their comfort zone. So no, but it's more common for them to maybe the karaoke videos on YouTube of their popular song, or rapping along to their favorite rapper, is more of a common experience. And I'd always try and go there. Go where are you most comfortable? Where do you feel most at home? Let's start from there.
Do you do any vocal work, particularly once you've developed a relationship that is more creative, that is more about them perhaps writing their own lyrics or developing?
Absolutely. Yeah, very. As soon as we can, we might be writing some lyrics, or we might be looking at the lyrics of other people. We might be exploring, can you make the same sound? So that's when the keyboard comes out, and that exploring notes. And I think a nice little game and a little challenge comes quite nice. So I talk, kids don't often know about the sort of the range a singer might have, What's the lowest you can sing? What's the highest you can sing? And again, you can sort of make yourself disarm the situation by making yourself sound silly, but also funny. You know, so if I'll try and sing as low as I can, we'll go down the keyboard until you know, and people start giggling, and it's great. And let's go, how high can I go? And it's great because it's just it makes the whole process sort of less serious. And so finding somebody's range and wow, that's great. You can sing from there to there, you know. I can sing from there to there, and we discuss the difference. And so I like that. Perhaps using the voice as a just as a noise making thing. Also, those lovely voice. Those vocal training exercises, the vocal fry, you know, and making weird sounds, woo sounds, and again, I wouldn't do that necessarily with everybody. You got to have to pick your moment with the right people. But again, I think just sort of exploring making a noise, and what's the noise? What sort of noises can you make? Goes back to the improvising thing. What's right for you? And then we might, yes, introduce very simple melody, you know, and just really building blocks, isn't it? I think it's a thing I hear a lot when I talk with other practitioners is break everything down. What's the first thing? What's the first step in singing? What is that? And it's often, yeah, opening your mouth and making a noise. If some kids are open to the A, E, I, O, you know, they might to the vowel sounds, and some kids just won't be. But just trying to get anything out and share it and do it and repeat it, and you know, if you've got the opportunity, I must say that I have as much as I can, I'll try to work one-to-one with these young people before they're ever put in groups. What I can, working in, especially for the first few sessions with young people, they will not open up in front of other young people. Because for absolute fear of ridicule and very, very scared of revealing themselves. So, but one-to-one work's kind of essential, and then once they build up that confidence, maybe we pair them off and we'll make small groups when they're all feeling a bit confident about themselves. But it's that you have to be so careful at that time, because they are beginning to trust you by opening up and revealing themselves with their voice, aren't they? I mean, it's not often. It's only in these sorts of conversations where you reveal what you sort of think, oh, that's what I'm doing, isn't it? Or that's what we're doing. But they're trusting me with their voice, and not to take the mick or abuse it or destroy it. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's so many examples, and we find this with teachers a lot of people at some point in their lives being told that they couldn't sing or told not to, or and the unbelievable scars that can leave, that people carry sometimes for the rest of their lives. You're right. It's that vulnerable time, isn't it? So if you have the time in the relationship and they develop in their confidence and expertise, do you get into things like lyric writing? Does music ever become a way of them expressing some of the things that they're dealing with in their lives?
Yes, absolutely, very much so. Yes, songwriting is probably the most relatable musical activity that most young people can connect with. They know what a song is. They know what they like and what they don't like. They know what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. They know what a good lyric might be and what a good lyric isn't be. So we can sort of explore all that, and explore explore the music they like, and we can study that and do something similar. I've quite often, if a young person is tentative about doing it, it might be that we might take 4 lines or 1 line of a tune that they already know and just change the words, and to make it about them. So it's somebody else's song, so that the pressure is off. It's not their song, somebody else's song. They've just changed the words into their own words, and then suddenly there's and then maybe then further down the line you can we change the melody a little bit, and suddenly it's their own song. Whatever way, one has to have sort of many different ways. How many ways into it can you have? And there's always another way.
Have you got an example of a young person or a group of young people where a really kind of tangible transformation happened as a result of doing something maybe vocally with you?
Yes, absolutely. There was one young woman who was mute, an elective mute, when she came into the secure unit, but really loved music and would hum everything and would hum to everything. We didn't really ever exchange conversation in 3 months, 4 months. I respected her however she wanted to communicate. But from humming, we would hum together and find notes. And then very slowly she'd start to sing the lyrics, and I was very careful not to sort of go, wow, well done, yeah, you're doing it. It was like, just, that's great, and she would then end up singing songs, other people's songs, and then getting her to sing that into the microphone became the next big thing, just to hear your voice back through a speaker. And then eventually ask permission to come and record that. And I remember, and then asking her permission, can we play the recording to other people? So a very careful stages. And I remember we invited a member of staff in, her closest, her most sort of trusted member of staff, because in a secure home you have the educational staff, but you also have all the care staff. And we invited her most sort of trusted care staff member in, and there was, there's the space. You play it when you're ready to play it. And she played the song, and I remember the care staff member just, it's coming down, and the joy and the shock of the young person to see the effect that it had on the member of staff. And she eventually ended up, starting to. No, she was never very chatty, but it took months, for her to relax and enjoy. But I do believe the musical process, again, that gaining confidence in that if you utter something, no one's going to, we're not, the world isn't going to jump on you and call you out and just laugh at you or criticize you or, big thing. Yeah, beautiful.
Oh, that must be so rewarding to experience and to feel like, something that you did has brought that about, something that major in someone's life, to be able simply to open up and communicate.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. And I think, I talk about music being a non-verbal language, and I think I do include singing in that, I think, because I think singing is something different. It's not talking. It's not the difficulties of negotiating a conversation. It's language and conversation and small talk, that brings all its difficulties, but I think music is another way. And whether it, yes, we all, you know, the joy of a melody can express so much, of course, and how you, and the tone and the rhythm and all those things, and a lot of these young people have a deep mistrust of language, I think, of what anyone or what people say. You know, if someone, another example is a young man who, at the age of 14, had been through 20 care homes in his life. Now that's more than, you know, I don't know how many. That's more than one a year, isn't it? You know, and so how can that young person sort of trust anything anyone says or an adult will say, and that, you know, and would mistrust you? Why are you trying to build a relationship with me? I'll be gone in 3 months, 4 months time. You know, what's the point of talking? Everything, you know. So, but music, banging a drum and eye contact while you're banging a drum, or shouting, or spitting, or saying some lyrics, it's a different thing. You know, it's a different way of doing things.
Presumably, one of the realities of working in this context is that you've no idea day to day who you're likely to get and how long they're going to be there for. Is that right?
Yeah. Each young person will come with a minimum of 3 months as a care order, it will be called. Some will be there longer, 4 months, 6 months. Some will be sentenced and may be there till they're 18 and then maybe go off to adult prison. Some for very long sentences. So you're dealing with a very, you know, a wide range of issues. If people don't know that, people can't enter the adult penal system till they're 18. So in that time, they have to be secured in either young youth offending institutes or secure children's homes. So, sorry, what was the question again, Baz? It was
it's just about the transience and the unpredictability of who you're going to get.
Yeah. So the time, yes, you don't know how much time you've got. You just chip away, I think, and you hope that. I suppose, you know, what are the indicators? I suppose success. You know, what are outcomes? What do you feel like is yes, I've managed to have some kind of effect, and I think that is that self-determination. That sort of, someone can come in and if someone comes in and goes, I'd like to do this today, that's great. If someone can, it feels like they are I try and tell people, you are a creative person, and being creative is a thing, because a lot of these young, as I said, the privilege of being brought up to be encouraged to be creative, and for my creativity to be given some sort of acknowledgement. You know, someone would have said, "Oh, that's good, Chris," or "Well done." You know, and again, a lot of these young people, that's alien to them. The idea that you can make music in your, and I say, yeah, and it doesn't have to be a job, you know, because a lot of that, again, there's this whole sort of impetus on, if you do something, it has to be because that's what you do as a job. And it's like, no, you don't have to do it as a job. You just do it. And what? You know, yeah, you can play your guitar, and sometimes your friend can come round and play guitar together, or you could sing songs with your, hey, you know, it's completely alien to a lot of these, you know, young people. And so it's the gift of that, I think, that gift of saying this is that wonderful thing where you can create your own thing, or you can and you can share it with other people. That's you know. And I say to them, that's all I kind of live for, really. You know, what else is there? You know, it's, you know, that joy of being creative, of taking. Do you like taking photographs? No. Oh, do you? I'll go and take some photographs. You know, well, you know, whatever it might be. I think that's probably, if you know that they've gone away with that you know you've done all right.
Let's step back a bit and just look at the system, particularly the CAMS system, and just to explain, that's the Children and Adolescent Mental Health Services, which are part of the statutory setup. And I think it has different names depending on sort of different parts of the country. But
Yes,
it's
different organisations.
Yeah. It's something we've heard a lot pre and post pandemic is this crisis of children and young people's mental health and well-being, and a system that is struggling to cope. What's been your experience of that, and the place of collaborative, creative, non-statutory music making, and how it sort of fits within that sort of crisis environment?
It's interesting because the young person's engagement with these services is voluntary. So how a young person can refuse to engage with CAMS, can refuse to engage with sort of emotional and psychological support. They just have to say no, and then they can't be forced into it. Which, when you think about it, of course, that needs to be. Can't force someone into a scary place, and a lot of young people will be scared. So, in the best scenario, the people who are doing this type of work then come to those people and work alongside the people who are able to engage the young people, which in a secure home is the care staff and perhaps the educational team, and maybe people like me who sort of sit somewhere in between. I will, if the best scenario is that I will sit down with the child psychologist or the psychological team and talk about what are the needs that these young people, in order for us to give them a better chance in life to succeed, to survive, to just get through the next 6, 12 months, 2 years. What do we need? What tools do we need to give them? And often they are relationship ones, as I mentioned before. So build appropriate relationships with adults, perhaps, where where these young people have come through issues of neglect or abuse. That's a fundamental thing to change. They will have either incredible mistrust or overly trustful of adults. And you have to, so negotiating appropriate relationships. What should a normal relationship be with an adult? For me, it's with an adult man, and that is different with the experience of the young people. Both young men and women have had perhaps been sexually abused or been abused in other ways, and in just your presence as a man might be a trigger. So one has to be very careful with how one approaches that. But then there'll be a lot of communication. So as I said before, a lot of young people will have special needs, and a lot of them will be communication, language, and perhaps adjusting their behaviour appropriately and behaving appropriately to the environment. Lots of ADHD in the young people in the care homes, which is really interesting. As a musician, hopefully I'll get onto that. I have lots of, I think I have lots of interesting things that I do around young people with ADHD. But the discussion will be, what are they struggling with? And I always think I find it fascinating that I have this confidence, but I always think I have an answer. So if someone is going, well, this young person has difficulties with that, I can think of a musical activity that will help. It's the extraordinary thing about music is that
wow.
We'll do that. It doesn't. I don't ever think, oh dear, I'm a bit stuck there. It's like, well, of course. So if someone has a problem working in groups, well, okay, group music. There we go. Can we play in rhythm? Can we play alongside each other? Problem expressing themselves appropriately. Okay. Problems sort of synchronizing with other people. Well, there you go. There's a fundamental musical activity.
So go on, give us an example of an ADHD.
So the drum kit, I feel, is the cure, not the cure, but it's wow. A drum kit can do so much for kids, for young people with attention deficit. What I've noticed is that you get a young person with ADHD onto a drum kit, and they will start slow, speed, and then speed up and speed up and speed up. So they can't go any faster, and then we'll stop, and then we'll start again, and we'll start slow, and then speed up and speed up and speed up. And there's a it becomes clear. This is, I can't say this for a fact, but my experience tells me that regulating tempo and regulating where you're sort of synchronizing tempo with somebody else is really difficult, and it's up and down all the time, slowing up, speeding up, slowing up, speeding up, never quite getting in sync with somebody, and it's exhausting. The poor young people are exhausted. And if we just think about a young person, well, if that's their situation across the board, so if I've got ADHD and I enter a room and there's two people are talking, to try and regulate my behavior to theirs and the tempo of their conversation, really difficult, which is why kids with I'll be speeding up, slowing down, and, behaving in an irritating manner, which someone will translate into disruptive, and that poor child is removed,
Yeah.
So we've got to give these young people a chance to synchronize, and that takes time. So a drum kit is just a lovely way of two drum kits, two people sat opposite each other with some drums, and just starting to synchronize. And if you can get 5 seconds, 10 seconds at the same time, great, we've done it, have a rest, and let's go again, and that, if you're allowed the days and the weeks, that can turn into 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, that young person's behavior and their ability to come into a room and tune into what is happening in that room, to read the room. We might call it reading the room, but it's that, and I firmly believe that music has a big part to play in supporting that process. But I think also, and this again, I don't know what the research is, but I believe that there's a way of us helping sort of almost diagnose the needs of a young person, and the extent of somebody's difficulties in what we call attention deficit, but I think it's more synchronization deficit. A lot of these young people are incredibly bright, so it's not their attention, it wanders because they see it. I get it. Oh, I get that. tell me something new, or I'm bored, or I'm going to go and go and do something else. It's not a knowledge or not a intelligence thing. It's something else.
So music quite literally helps to tune in to where they are.
Absolutely. And those key words, synchronizing, tuning in, tempo, dynamics.
Yeah.
How loud or how quietly shall we be in this environment? So being quiet, let's be quiet together. Then let's get louder together. In this day and age with so much sound and noise, you go into, where can we ever regulate that and have control of that with another person? It's very, very rare occurrence. You're either fighting for attention or being shouted at, or we could walk into shops and all the sound and music that's, where we're not in control very often. So to have control of that with another person, let's sing quietly, let's shout, and that release of shouting with somebody, fantastic, let's shout, brilliant.
Yeah. You talked earlier about the importance of the planning process with staff in those institutions. Tell me about sort of the other end of it, the looking at the outcomes of it and ensuring their sort of ongoing support and advocacy for what you're doing within a system that maybe doesn't always have a mechanism to measure those outcomes in a useful way.
It's very frustrating that and this all the way through, I've kind of wondered why do they not come to me and ask me for what happened in music, because throughout when you're talking with staff and talking with and people are always incredibly interested in what happened in music with that young person today, because often it's very different to what's happened in English or maths. Not surprisingly, with knowing young people's difficulties with those, with education, the idea of being stupid and learning and stuff. So one is always involved in really interesting conversations and positive conversations. And yet, when it comes to sending that young person back off into another, back into the world or onto another institution, you never get. There isn't a collar. There isn't a box on the report form that says how did that young person do in a musical setting, which might as well translate for how did that young person do it in a creative setting, because that doesn't get asked either. Or how does that young person express themselves, because that doesn't get really asked either, So it's a wider thing, but I find it extraordinary that we don't send that on, and that and I often have, if somebody's shown a lot of musical, I've enjoyed the musical experience, and you think, gosh, where are they going next? They need to have some music. I have to get up and I have to find out where they're going, phone that place up, and start to negotiate and start to make relationships with the place, because that often doesn't really get translated. And unless that person, a young person ends up in a new place and they say, what do you like to do? Well, I like to do music. And they go, oh, right, oh yeah, whatever, and they kind of, then suddenly all that you've done. The biggest frustration, I think, for anybody working in these environments is you can put all this work in, and a lot of money is spent on these young people, but in terms of resources and staffing, and then off they go, and it's just all the work that you put in, all the trust that they build with you is sort of destroyed within days, because the new environment doesn't support them in the same way, doesn't offer them the same things, doesn't give them the hope of having those things, So that's it. It's very demoralising.
You've been part of a film that Yorkshire Youth and Music have done for us, which gives an insight into what it's like working in some of these challenging settings where we see you in action. But what's so powerful is the way that the staff within that institution understand what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Absolutely.
You don't have to justify your own presence there.
Yes, very much so. It's my most common experience is that you have to turn that around a bit. I'm sure you're that's your experience too. Often you're going in, and people have a limited, let's say, understanding of what you do and the effects and the potential outcomes. The positive outcomes of what you can do. At best, perhaps you provide entertainment or some kind, and it's a distraction away from the general educational experience. But and you have to convince and turn that round. I didn't know for years. I didn't really realise how much you had to sort of go and show people and let people know. But now I do that as a sort of as much as I can. I will say this person was doing this. They're now doing this. Look at this extraordinary development. Give me more time. Let me do this or let me do that. Recently, I've been involved with one organisation that it was a joy, because as I went in and I made sure they wanted me to come in the next week and just start, and I said I'll come in and chat with you first, because I want to talk about what what's the point? Why am I coming in? What do you think I can do? What do I think I can do? Let's talk about that. And that was the first. I hadn't ever sort of demanded of an institution that I've got needs. And I don't know if I want to work with you yet. I'm not just going to, I won't just come in and do work because thank you, you've given me some work. I want it to be good work. So I think having if there's any sort of advice out there to any other practitioners, it's control what you are doing and why you're doing it, and people will listen. They just don't realize they needed to listen. So I went in and talked about what I did, and I was just going to be doing some enrichment stuff, and enrichment is out extra curriculum stuff. Won't it be nice for the kids to do some music? But actually, as soon as I started talking, the deputy head, a guy called Gary, just said, "You need to be doing intervention work with Amosol young people. I can see exactly what you're doing. We're wasting the limited time we've got by he said, I can get some drums out and bang some drums with people. What you're doing is different, and that was brilliant. And to know that they get it from the people at the top, get it and get why you're there, and will give you every opportunity, because that changes everything. Then if I say, if they say, well, you can work with these three people, and I say I can't work with those three because those two really will not work together well and will be at a detriment. I need to work with them separately. They'll go fine, They won't just sort of they'll listen, and they understand that the process is a different one. So that's the best case scenario. But I think unless you sort of demand that space and demand that time to say, I'm taking myself seriously, and I don't know if I can do this, but this is what we can do. The possibilities are, and they're usually, because it's a bit of a dark art. Really. Music is everywhere, so people think they know what music is, but what we do is quite a dark art, or not a dark art. Maybe what's the opposite of a dark art? But It's an art that I'm never in.
Yeah. What would be your advice to someone looking to get into this field of work, particularly working with the most challenged and vulnerable young people?
If you're waiting for a job opportunity to come up, it may not come up. It's contact people, get in touch with people, let them know kind of what you'd like to do, and start doing it. There will always be if you go to any youth, your local youth services, and you say, I'd like to get some experience working with young people doing some music, they're going to go, yes, please. And they'll, they will facilitate. And if they don't, they're daft, because I'd be very surprised if they didn't. So take the initiative, and just be yourself. You don't have to have great knowledge, I don't think, of anything particularly, but I think you just have to be sensitive, and I think you have to be good at listening and taking in what somebody is presenting you with. You don't have to have the answers. I think young people are really good at, if you're full of, I'm trying to think of the what's all correct, a polite way of saying you're not full of whatever it is. If you don't know something, it's all right to say, I don't know that, but let's find out. That trust, that they need to learn that you're a genuine person who knows some things, doesn't know some things. There is that pressure, I think, on any educator, that you have to be responsible knowledge and be a genius and be brilliant at anything. And I think there's nothing more intimidating than someone who is a genius and full of themselves and knows everything. I can't think of somebody I'd less want to talk to. I want to, it's not a reality, is it? So if you can relax, if you enjoy young people, if you enjoy exploring and discovering and finding new ways of doing things, then you're the right person, and the work will find you. I think if you go and the work will find you if you go and find it. I think people will see your value, and there are organisations around there. I've hooked up Yorkshire Youth and Music, who I work under, a fabulous organisation, and I'm sure there are many organisations around. But I did a lot of work myself. I was self-employed for a long time, but the work is there.
That feels like a great place to finish. So just one final question. I'd love you to share a particularly inspiring vocal moment from some point in your life.
This is from a secure unit. There was a young woman who was a profoundly deaf from birth, and she was getting into all sorts of difficulties. I think some sexual exploitation. Was never in school. She came from her parents were also profoundly deaf, and they had a severe mistrust of any sort of education system, believing that nothing was catered for them. And their experience was that nobody really could do anything for them. So she was tough to handle, and I didn't know any sign language, so I did try and learn. I quickly learned some very basic sign language, and she said music wasn't for her. She said she came into a music, so this is not for me. I can't do music, which was interesting. But I said, so, but do you like music? And she said, I can see other people enjoying it, and I like I want to join in, but I don't really understand what it is. So we kind of basically fathomed out that she really didn't understand what music was. So here was this incredible opportunity to to introduce music as a concept to somebody who hadn't really got it. And we did drumming, and we went for vibrations and synchronizing and feeling what was going on. But one day she said she wanted to sing. And so I'd never done this before. I'm not a vocal coach. I haven't done vocal training. So the only thing I could think of was could she feel what my throat was doing? So I invited her to hold my throat while I sang. And and I sort of felt my own throat. But yes, that's a thing. And then you've got her and then I asked if I could hold her throat and could she make the same noise? And eventually she started to make this sound. And so we developed it from there. And then I thought, but I need her to, how can we develop that experience even more? So the Yorkshire Youth Music have these things called the sub packs. I don't know if you've come across them. These are sort of jackets that vibrate to low frequencies. They were originally built for music producers to emulate the sub bass that you might feel in a club, but sat in your chair while you're in your studio. I don't know how successful they've been that way, but they've been quite successful within the special needs education community and with deaf people. So they vibrate to low frequencies, up to about 200-300 hertz. So I got a synthesizer and plugged it in, and we played the note, and suddenly she was vibrating to this note. And then I also sang the same note while she was. So there's this note, this frequency playing through her. I'm singing the note, she's feeling me, my throat singing that note, and then she sang that note, which was just extraordinary.
And what was her reaction to successfully doing that?
Well, I don't think she quite realized, she was, I think she remembered, she looked at my face and she went, what? Because I was like, wow. And I was quickly phoned someone and said, come and see this. And we changed notes and she sang those notes. So suddenly she was singing and she had an idea. And so then I could play her the music and she got it. Suddenly it was, oh my God, I see it. I feel it. I understand it. The change in vibrations is what all these other people are enjoying. And it was just this extraordinary moment of revelation, of an epiphany. Yeah, that was it.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow, thank you for sharing that. God, that's really extraordinary.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, it's so interesting chatting to you about your work. Thank goodness for people like yourself that are able and confident to go into these environments and help to bring whatever it is to those young people to help them engage with something mostly really positive and in some cases really transformational. So yeah, lovely to chat to you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bess. Thank you.
This is Inspiring Voices, the podcast of the Sing Up Foundation. Join us for the rest of the series on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and other major platforms. You can also watch the video of each episode on the Sing Up Foundation YouTube channel.
Inspiring Voices, a new podcast from the Sing Up Foundation.